Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 2 of Spy Family. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. Alright, so this is the first time we're hearing that opening. And to be honest, I really like it. It sort of puts me in mind of one of the remixes of like the Cutie Honey theme, I think back from the early 2000s. I think it's really suited for this series. So, unfortunately, Frankie has been sort of roped into helping out for something he is wholly unqualified for. You gotta feel bad for Frankie. He's really the MVP, as it turns out. You know, he pulls more than his fair share of weight around these parts. So, as things stand, in order to get into Eden Academy, Lloyd is gonna have to find a wife, and that is no mean feat in this time and place. So, as if to foreshadow what's going on, we sort of flash to these office women who are what I can only assume are doing typical office women things, you know, being vindictive and stuff like that. Naturally, it seems like these three are sort of trying to rope in their loony coworker into the conversation, but she isn't really picking up the implications of exactly what they're suggesting. Of course, with my marvelous powers of pattern recognition, and given the fact that I've already read a fair bit of the manga, we could safely assume that anybody who stands out is probably ripe to be a main character or an otherwise important character. And so, you know, Yor is really going out of her way here to seem as though, you know, nothing's really going on. She's just an office worker. You know, simple, quiet life and all that. Turns out that might not be the best approach, as, like, single mid to late 20s women are being suspected of espionage. And considering that's Yor's age range and demographic, she seems to be the perfect suspect for the secret police looking to root out spies. So it really seems like that despite all these women are talking to Yor, they don't really seem like friends, more just like work acquaintances. So here we learn a little bit more about Yor. You know, she's got a younger brother who's kind of overprotective of her. Perhaps understandably so, if that whole espionage business is common public knowledge. Although at this point, it seems like he's just, a dutiful brother. He wants his sister to be happy. Of course, one might think that he's being a little bit too pushy in trying to get his sister hitched off with someone. I mean, I guess that's mainly up to your own interpretation. This is a different time and place, I think the whole setting is supposed to be like 60s Cold War Europe era. So standards were different back then than they are now. I can't say I'm too familiar with it given how I didn't live through it. So you're kind of told a little bit of a fib and seems to have gotten herself into a bit of a bind. So this is really bad for Yor because she really doesn't want to abuse the trust of her little brother. And I don't blame her considering he seems to be the only family she has. So now we learn a little bit more about Yor. The reason why she took that whole espionage thing to heart is because she does in fact have something to hide. It's not that she's a spy, but rather she's a contract killer. And a rather effective one. Tantamount to being a one-man army, considering how she just slaughtered a couple people with relatively little effort. I would imagine wearing a dress and high heels like that wouldn't make assassination work any easier, but, far be it for me to criticize, I have no experience in that field. So it seems like Yor is just having non-stop problems. She managed to ruin her dress just in time for that party. And she doesn't have a boyfriend to attend the party with, so things are truly bleak. But at the same time, she can't really weasel out of it because she had already told her brother. So once again, foreshadowing is occasionally straightforward here. Flipping back and forth between Yor and Lloyd seems to indicate that, hey, maybe they could solve each other's problems. Wouldn't that be nifty? So once again, Frankie is doing the lion's share of the work here. He's managed to scrounge up the records of all unmarried women within a certain age range in the city for Lloyd to peruse. The idea being, hopefully they can find one who doesn't mind a single father with a kid and is willing to get married in order to get the kid into a fancy academy. Just thinking about the logistics of everything, Lloyd is really in a bind. Not just in relation to Operation Strix, but also because he has to handle other missions too on the side because everybody's short-staffed. Man, everybody being short-staffed, doesn't that just feel ripped from the headlines? So, once again, Frankie is making the very astute observation that if Anya is supposedly the young little aristocrat who would go to Eden Academy in the first place, she certainly doesn't act like it, given her affinity for that spy program and just being a rambunctious little kid. I mean, all little kids are the same to some degree, but I feel like if you're of noble stock, so to speak, you would probably be raised differently from a very, very early age. Oh, what's that, Lloyd? Finding the right person might take longer than expected? Funny you should mention that, because here's your right now. Oh, I tease, of course. I love this show. This is great stuff. Of course, we're still merely in the setup phase, so to speak. Things don't really kick off until all the characters are sort of established. And thus, we have a nice fertile ground upon which comedy can bloom. So it seems like Lloyd and Yor, through their own secret set of skills, have become aware of each other's presence. You know, Lloyd's like, wow, she walked behind me without me even noticing. And Yor's like, this guy's staring at me, even though Lloyd is ostensibly trying to be discreet. So even if subconsciously they both know that something's up here. So obviously Anya hears these horribly evil thoughts Yor's thinking about, being a homewrecker and killing the wives of married men. But naturally, in her mind, pairing an assassin up with a spy only makes sense, Practically a match made in heaven. Thanks to her mind-reading powers, she knows that the circumstances happen to line up in such a way that they would actually be perfect for each other. But obviously, she can't let that on, that she knows what they're thinking. She has to sort of ham it up. I really like that Yor's relief comes in the form of not having to kill or be killed by a scorned housewife. So I find it interesting, all the layers of deception that's going on here. Obviously Lloyd is lying because his whole mission hinges on it, but Yor, at least, is being semi-truthful about her motivation. She needs to get her brother off her back. Obviously, she can't go around telling people she's an assassin, but that's not necessarily pertinent to the story, so she can kind of leave that out. So already, Lloyd is sort of plotting further moves to sort of navigate this relationship into something beneficial to his mission. So once again, it seems like Lloyd has been given another mission. And this time he's retrieving stolen jewelry and art and eliminating a smuggling ring. Unfortunately, the mission just so happens to overlap ever so slightly with the party he's supposed to go to. So once again, he can't be stopped. He ropes Frankie into this to help him complete the mission ASAP so he can get to the party. Oh, man. This is great stuff. This is the foundation of a great and powerful farce. Overlapping lies that compound and cause people to lie even more as things only get more and more absurd. Now, astute viewers will notice that Frankie is wheeling the cart with all of the stolen stuff. It seems like no matter what, he has to do the heavy lifting here. I mean, yeah, Lloyd is fighting off all the assailants, but like, if they don't recover the stolen stuff, the whole thing is moot. So unfortunately, they're not able to get off the hook as easily as they might have liked, you know. The assailants from the smuggling ring are still sort of tailing them, trying to kill them. Unfortunately, this means that Lloyd's mission has run on longer than he'd anticipated, and he's he's effectively stood Yor up for the party. But, true to her word, she has to attend the party anyways, regardless of whether she has a date or not. Now, that's gotta be rough, you know, going to the party without a date, even though you made a big deal about having one. Especially because it seems like everybody's already kind of suspicious about her. And this really only compounds things. You know, this could have the secret police investigating her, which would no doubt be something very bad. And as if that weren't bad enough, her brother's associate is at the party, and she tries to, like, get him to cover for her, but that blonde harpy, Camilla as it were, is very determined to, well, just ruin everything, seemingly for no better reason than because it's Tuesday. You know, it's a day that ends in Y. I have to stick my nose into other people's business. Tellingly, Yor's first response is, you know, maybe I'll just slaughter everyone here so that way word doesn't get out. But, you know, there's got to be like a dozen people, more than a few of whom are little children. Like, I mean, yeah, Yor slaughters people, but I don't think she would just kill kids on a whim like that. You know, despite being an assassin, she doesn't strike me as evil. So it's very clear that this is a bit of a social faux pas to have shown up and stayed at the party this long. However, fate intervenes once again. Lloyd manages to show up late and bloodied, but show up nonetheless. He has, of course, mixed up all his various missions. You know, he introduced himself as Yor's husband. You know, whoops, moving a little too quickly there. Nobody knew about that. And, you know, if Yor's date showing up weren't bad enough to Camilla, he's actually attractive, which really just makes things undeniably worse, as if this were a personal affront to her. Man, that's not even like a plausible accident. She really just like threw the whole tray at Yor. Like, at least in the manga, the way it was drawn, it was a somewhat plausible sort of accident, but wow. Man, she really can't help herself, can she? Camilla is just an awful shrew of a human being. She has to go and make speculation about what Yor did prior to working at City Hall. Of course, what she did do, or what she said she did, was a euphemism for assassination work, but So it seems like Lloyd is drawing a bit on his own experience here, talking about how laudable it is to sacrifice oneself on the behalf of someone else. And saying, that's what he really admires about Yor. It's a nice little bit of, juxtaposition how Lloyd and Yor, despite all their nominal differences, they really do have a lot in common, even if they don't know that. So finally, if things hadn't wrapped up with a nice little bow, the smugglers have to show up one more time to try and kill Lloyd. Naturally, this whole thing is suspicious. Why would a bunch of people try to kill a psychologist? So naturally, Lloyd has to lie and say, oh, they're just some of my patients, they're a bit deranged. Don't mind them too much. Unfortunately, at least from Lloyd's perspective, there are these armed thugs out to kill, and he's brought, an innocent woman along with him. Really not a good thing. I guess the only bright spot in all of this is that, she just sort of buys all of his lies at face value. The concussive therapy being a psychological technique and all that. She even apologizes for, kicking a guy because an amateur shouldn't be performing such a therapy on another doctor's patient. Whether or not it's actual naivety on her part, it's still very charming, I think. And I guess given what I know, there's no indication that she's not actually that naive. I don't know. I think it makes her a very lovable character. So, things escalate a little bit more. Yor broaches the topic of marriage as it would provide better cover for a single woman like her. As it happens, this is exactly what Lloyd wants, and that was why he pilfered that diamond ring earlier. It's just good fortune for him that Yor brought up the topic so he wouldn't have to. Alright, now this is probably my favorite scene. This is what sold me on the manga when I first read it. This sweet, hand grenade proposal. Hurls the hand grenades at the smugglers, takes the ring pull from it, and uses it as a makeshift ring. That's good stuff. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.